Woo-wee, let's bust this puppy out. Just got done with the DNRC labor with Deb over there, so this is fun. You shouldn't have too much problem reading the anthology that I've been giving you for the labor. I mean, there's a wave function, it's stone mill, board factory, gas station, rotation, and when you do petty cash, clean the bathrooms, wipe handles, change coffees. Any of those are independently wave function, but in the zero sum set, big M's, little m's, and the rest of this, I want you to feel a little bit more comfortable, right? So this is an equal symbol. There's going to be parts of it that are equal, not necessarily to some uncertainty that comes with that, but there's your signal to say it's the approximation. It's not a hard line, it's a light spectrum. Here it's going to be generally Kelvin if you have the black body problem, but it can also be the proton's position or some protium, maybe some flavor on what that is. Now, I might not have that right according to Formulab at 200 negative 73 Kelvin to Celsius out at 0. Being 0, you just negative 273 plus C with the 0, which makes this a loop with Richard spinners or splines, that don't hurt the loop. Sometimes a Klein bottle, coffee cup. Mine's generally Small World after all. Right now I'm holding it. You go on, friend. What do you got to say?
To find the allowed energies En of an infinite square well with a, quote, shelf of height V0 extending halfway across. Figure.
Okay, figures. Alright, 7, Bruce Almighty, and here's 7 at 7 on the 7th floor about Hollow the Lambda 7. The Mu 7 is going to Ghostbusters this financially as a PhD or what's inside the bubble, because here's N pi H. Well, that sounds like a PhD to me as far as a, hang with me here, P N V M V, or what is it, P I H, you need this one, delta. But that's basically all what this is in a different form or a different language. Maybe this one's broken down to like you're an older, so you're a big M, but actually because of the big force you were a kid, that stretches out to E, and that's an infinity, so it would be a little m off of that, right? Even though you're older, big delta. And so you'll get some of that quintessence. I personally prefer negative 272.999999 Kelvin here. Well, let's just stop at the third decimal real quick, because these two would be why. In that, again, I'm going to get some wave function. The height, H, F, G's, all kinds of sonic wave stuff out of that. Usually, if you like to bring down the equation, then it's scale geometry. It says this is E to the power, KT minus epsilon, or omega T, a little omega T. That means it's like in the sunshine. It already happened. It's old, but I'm looking back into sunshine because it's a little bit time dilated in a 3 mean like that. But the 3 mean also has that high and wide application of what that time frequency domain is apparently doing in the square well. It's got to be, that's again, we're keeping it to a dot plotted system instead of necessarily an animation of that as far as an SU1 or an SU2. Realistically, if I take the ASVAB out and I say N students, and that's a wave function in itself gathering them, but you don't know that. You know that the end result identity says bones with the number in the form of fx. Instead of being the devil, you get the I, or EIFXO, right? I mean, come on. PHERO, Pharaoh. So, when I'm reading some schematic about whether it be how to thermal bluestone, I broke that down. Here's the history of marijuana. Most of them carry an A1 to Reno note breaking scale of they're very used to doing something like this. It's a very analytical process of to take this and do that in a geometry, which 2 pi and some stuff make this line X to Y, big X to little x, break it down depending on what language you're used to or however far you manage to build a birdhouse that actually all the screwdrivers are part of it. Yep, alter snap on back here, because then I can say it's 1. We grease them all and make sure they're all in their proper every other Thursday, just to be sure. 0. And that's going to cause some hell usually. So I'm around here. an ellipse, I think is what that's called, which is the dot dot dot, M1, M2, Mn, P1, dot dot dot, P2. It can mean any and all of those things as far as what's in the barrel. As far as a Gaussian orientation is how I like that. And again, bull coffins, usually long wave function, human lifespan. What's generally the appropriation of the probability of energy that I got to expend to fighting it off, or just as a mathematical standpoint. And that's, this 55 anti-meme over at the SCP about the third three tower, and Cliff saying something about the symbols don't matter as far as the reality warping or anchoring of how you misinterpret which and or D flip-flop the logic gate's got to go through that thing. And at that point in time, 10 volts. I mean, it's just got to be ready to beast mode that. The fact that its geometry is copper or little wires in a chip is going to say it bang, 1. Bang, client, 1. And that might be relative to how those other things get programmed, or why utilizing the geometry, circles, squares, so on and so forth, cover some X and Y, A and B standards for me to define that name in that bond, because then you get a lot more of the chemistry when you remove C from this behavioral material. We don't want it to be sunshine. We want it to be the periodic table as far as what elements seem rational of exclusionary principles once they're defined by argon and helium and some other things. But notice that the Zeno's paradox doesn't necessarily care about that. What we are today, as much as independently running one of those theses, is pretty much a parroted verbatim, and I might get caught in a parlay clemency situation as far as how complete my thesis might have been if I'm utilizing this technology. And as a physicist, there's a population to consider about if I was on their page, what the register is on Quark chain.